everyone. Let's see, what is it, Wednesday? It's very good to see everyone. I'm Amy Murphy. I'm joining you from Texas. I'm at a regional state institution here. I'm an associate professor at Angelo State University here in the College of Education. I'm a student affairs practitioner at heart. I have about 20 years of professional experience in student affairs and a good deal of that time as a member on and eventually chairing a behavioral intervention team, and have been working and presenting with Brian after meeting him in that capacity. So it's great to see everyone. Looking forward to the topic today.
Hi, I'm Bethany. I am the COO of DPrep Safety, and been working with Brian for years and years on BIT, Threat, and all of his work, and am a programmer by trade. So I developed with him the pathways and dark box systems and the tool that we're going to show you today. So if there's any technical difficulties, I'm the one to come to for any of that stuff.
And my name is Brian Van Brunt. I'm the Director of Behavior and Threat Management for DPrep. It's our free series where we look at different issues related to behavioral intervention teams, care teams, BIT, and threat teams. This was an exciting program. It's one of the first times we just said no slides. So we won't have slides for you today, but we do have some great presents. What we'll share with you today that is wrapped and ready for you to unwrap is our online version of our audit. One of the little secrets of our trade I can let you in on is part of the free webinars for us is also creating deadlines and a little tension to finish projects that we all said, this is a good idea for us to work on. And as the program gets close, we're like, we should really do that. So we updated, and I'll have Amy talk about the audit tool in a moment, but we updated the audit tool that she developed from 25 to 30 items. We expanded it a bit. And Bethany automated it. So we'll actually have a link for you that we'll put in the chat. We'll probably do it now if that's okay. And you can check it out and we'll actually walk you through it. Everything that we do is always evidence-based, and it's important to be in that space. Probably a place to start, Amy, is, I can pull it up on the screen, or if you want to talk just generally about the theory kind of behind why we thought like developing a new audit tool was important, and then we can kind of show it to folks. Maybe just let you talk for a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that my background, I've been the chair of behavioral intervention or care teams, and you can often feel in that role that you're operating a little bit in the blind in terms of knowing where you're going as a team, how you're doing as a team. And the truth is, we don't need to feel as though we're operating without a clear roadmap, because there's a great deal of research and best practice that tells us where we need to be, what are the characteristics of our team and need to look like. And so for me, I just wanted to continue to build on work out there, work that you've done previously, Brian, and that others in the field have done around kind of standards for teams and helping to give us a tool to evaluate how we're doing as a team. So that's what really drove this forward, is just wanting something that was really functional and it gave us a very unbiased way to consider how a team is functioning. And so then we started to think about what are the different characteristics of a team, and how might we break those out. And so, Brian, I don't know how far you want me to go into that, but for me, it was just looking for something that offered that framework for interpreting how our team was doing, and also to be able to offer to others, like whether it be my supervisor as the chair of a team, or to help other teams to look into the team to see, how are we doing? Are we aligned with best practice and what research says that we need to be doing as a care team?
So the first is this document, finally, and you can see it here. And what this is exactly what Amy was saying. It's the team definition. If you scroll over, team operations in the blue line, case processing, and then finally continuous improvement. And what Amy, you really designed this. Let me have you talk about it, because it seems silly to have me do it. You want to talk about the kind of the three stages that you developed here, and how we came across some of the text as we pulled that together?
For me, I think simplicity is really important here, that we shouldn't be, as someone applying this rubric, we should be able to tell pretty clearly that we are either aligned with recommended best practice or this is an opportunity for improvement, or this is a really high risk area of concern. So there's more distinction here. We only have 3 levels in which you're rating instead of trying to decide, oh, I'm almost aligned, right? So I think it's fairly clear that in the green, that we've identified that the team, the characteristic that we're rating is in alignment with research-based recommended best practices. And again, you notice the language here. We're not saying that we are just done and that we're not going to focus on this element any further, but that we just need to continue, that we need to sustain that practice, and regular continuous improvement is what's needed. Here in the yellow, we've identified an area where we're not quite there. We're not quite in alignment with everything that the research may say or that best practice would tell us. Maybe we have one component, but we're slightly off with one of the characteristics. And so here, improvement's needed. This is an opportunity for us to grow. It would not necessarily push us into a high risk area for our team. And I think that's an important distinction, but there's still opportunity here for us to revise and move closer to recommended practice. And then we have our red areas. And I think it was important to identify in our language where these are areas of risk for the team that are creating a legal risk for us. They're a risk in terms of our effectiveness, our efficiency. And so these are high risk areas of concern for the team where we need to prioritize and move more quickly toward at least getting us into the yellow category. So those are our 3 types of ratings. And it's important when you approach this tool to be honest and not to be concerned about putting that red rating on there. If anything, it's just telling you this is a place that I need to work. Just a small shift to the mission statement and a refocusing of the mission is something you can accomplish, fairly easily. So don't be concerned about giving yourself the honest and the realistic rating for your team. That's important.
Yeah, the old saying comes to mind, don't let good be perfection be the enemy of the good. That identifying areas of improvement, also in a growth mindset model, real important here.
And I
So
think
yeah,
also to know, Brian, right, of the audits we've done up to this point, I mean, the majority of our teams their rubrics are yellow with a few areas of red, right? So it's okay that you're not an entirely green rubric. That's not probably where most of us are going to be at this point. This is written as a tool to help you improve and get better. So it's going to identify those places where you need to have some growth.
and I think it's another, for those of you interested, it has this element as well of watching our development process. So our commitment at DPREP is to make things available. And, we very much had a debate and said, should we make this publicly available? Other organizations have chosen not to do that. And I think more's the pity when they don't. So having the ability to make a self-assessment available to the teams, it still allows us to do the training and the good work with you. So one of the debates we had was, if everyone can do a self-audit assessment, why would they need us to do a needs assessment? Well, it's complicated. We've done some at community colleges where they don't really have a conduct process yet. We have a new conduct course that we're rolling out now to fill some of that gap. We've had other schools where they have 4 separate teams with very confusing messaging. So while the rubric is helpful, seeing some of the Venn diagrams and the examples that we put together in the report to show exactly the path towards solution. And with our needs assessment, when we do one, it's usually having Amy or Dave or Charlie or Nina having some conversations with the team members, getting a good feel for what's going on the campus, and then from there developing a very exhaustive report that then leads to some included online trainings that we do with the team that are very tailored to the team's needs. So the first thing that you'll see is this PDF document, and we will have that on the audit site for y'all. The second thing that we'll have up, and this is kind of the exciting part and really shows some of I think I would say sort of the movement that we go through in terms of creating process, is the website. So this is Bethany's creation, and you can see here some of the summary levels. And this is available at dprepsafety.com/audit. We'll get you there nice and easy. I think it's dropped down from one of the menus here. What it does is essentially allows you as a team, and you could do this, Amy, I'll ask you to, if you have thoughts on how to do this. I could see the chair doing this. I could see everyone on the team doing it. I could see us doing this in a projection mode, but going through each of these areas and saying, do we have for example, a mission statement and saying that, it's something that we were going to make. It's okay. It's not great. And then you would check that area. Same with the scope of the team. Is that well defined? Maybe it's not. You have a great team name. Your team process, gathering data, assessing, intervening, that part you're doing really well. Membership is all over the map. So there's some problems there. So the idea is that you could go through each of these as you move and get a really nice read on where you are. To Bethany's chagrin, and I'm going to pass to her next, it is a little scrolly, but we went back and forth about the collapsing versus the not collapsing these areas. And I personally believe, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this, that having it like this is pretty helpful. First of all, because I'd be right, and that would make me feel glad inside. But more importantly, I think it's how I would go through this. If I was doing a rubric on a team that I was running, I was thinking about maybe Western Kentucky or New England College. Like, it would be easier for me to go through these, read the level of risk. Yep, we did that well. We didn't do this so well. We did this well. Like, it's designed to be, I think, easy to do on screen as you go forward as well. So while there's a lot of these, the idea is you're probably not doing this on a daily basis. This is once a year or every other semester kind of thing. And then at the end, you're going to put in your name if you choose to. The reason we're asking for the email part here is it gives you a chance to submit your results over to, and then kind of send that over as you go. It also creates a printable piece, and I don't think this is probably viewable to you. Do you see the printing thing
Yeah.
pop up? Oh, it did. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you'll see here, it's a bit long, it's 7 pages, but what it does is it shows you all the expanded categories and highlights the areas that your team audit is in present. And there's lots of good reasons to do this. And I'm kind of passed to Bethany and then to Amy on this, but one of the things that comes to mind is having this as a document, as a continuous improvement piece, saved within your bit team documents. Is if you do run into problems, the idea that you're looking at these areas and then building in your end of semester report a plan to address these. And as Amy suggested, sometimes it's as easy as changing something on the mission statement. Sometimes it's just a small change and immediately it's fixed. Other times it takes it's like pushing a rock uphill. It's a bigger issue to say address maybe a membership concern. But that's how we would see it working well in that space. Bethany, anything to add before I pass to Amy, just on the issue of the tool, things that you're thinking about, like how it's approached, anything like that? I can bring up it again if you need.
No, I think it's okay. I think what I would say is as you all are using it, I know it's not something you'll use every day. You use once, twice, maybe, over time. But if you see things that might make it clearer, might make it easier to use, please pass that on to me. It is a new tool. So we're trying to make it as user-friendly as we can. The other thing is, the other reason I think Brian kind of stopped mid-sentence maybe, or maybe I just missed it, but when he was talking about entering your email, what we're going to do then is when you send that over to us, what we will do is send you back. And if you all normally it will take a couple of days. We all are maybe doing it once. It might take a little longer this time because we are going to tailor an email back that will have some suggestions for both trainings that we offer and then free resources that can help you with those areas where you have concern or areas where you need improvement. So you'll get that back from us as part of this process. So that's why we requested your email, so that we can then help you improve your team in going forward. And again, some of it will be free. I mean, not all of it. Some of it obviously will be trainings that might be a little more in depth that we might charge, but we'll also include free resources in there too that can help you build your team stronger.
Amy, thoughts on anything I was saying?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Bethany, I love that you made it scrollable and that right now it's all on the screen, because I think for folks as you're using the tool, it's okay to look down. When you're looking at that team definition area and you see the one related, I think, to team process, it can feel like, well, wait, what? This is a really big category. Well, for team definition, this is sort of the foundational structure of your team. It's the framework for how your team operates. But if you needed to, you could scroll on down and you see where later on you're going to get a chance to evaluate like case processing in much more detail. So I think it's great that you can scroll, because if you find yourself going, well, wait, what about this? You can look on down and see, oh, there's a moment here later where I'll answer this type of question. And it's okay. It's one of those tools where it's fine to go back up and be like, oh, I realize now this really meant this, and so I can change this and have it reflect. It's not that type of tool where you get one shot and that's it. I think it right, Bethany, it has that ability
Right.
for you to kind of be
Exactly.
flexible and use it. The other thing that came to mind, Brian, for me, you started this conversation around, who is best to fill out this tool. And I think ultimately you have some choices here. This can be as simple and as straightforward as you want it to be, or you can add these different elements to it. So first, it can just be the chairperson or one individual who's reviewing the tool and completing it for the team. And the descriptions, again, it should be pretty straightforward where your team is at on most of these categories. You could do this as a team. You could have some conversation and use it as a great opportunity to talk with your team about where you're at and the different areas where you feel like team members have concerns. And that's a great way for your team to gain buy-in into this process and to be a part of this conversation. You could also identify other sources of evidence. You don't have to. There are certainly standards-based processes out there. CAS, for example, the Council for Advancement Standards in Higher Education, their program evaluation standard sets are based on this idea that we are pulling evidence for every single item that is identified. You can do that. You can certainly pull your mission statement and incorporate that. You can pull your team membership and have that there for you. So you can really make this as complex as you want it to be. As Brian said, when we come in and perform the audits for institutions, we are then generating survey data, we're generating interview data, documentation data. So evidence is really coming from multiple sources, but it's definitely a usable tool with just one individual taking a look at it. Yeah, but great work, Bethany. It's looking great already. I can't wait to play around with it further. Oh, one other thing, Brian, and then I'll kick it back to you. The tool does not at this point, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, does not generate a holistic score at the end. So there's no compilation of, okay, your team is a green star team. At this point, we're just rating the 30 different items and you have a score for each of those items. There is no holistic and final score.
That's correct. Yeah. It's the, I think we went back and forth on it too. Sometimes numbers are great, sometimes they're not. And this is one of those times where I just don't know that that's as useful because it kind of gives you the idea that like we're gold star, we don't need to do anything else anymore. And it kind of goes against that continuous improvement piece. And for folks who are growing and kind of moving into that space or have a new team, I think having the sound equivalent of a womp womp, like when you end up scoring, we certainly could do that. We have the technology, but I think it again is just overly negative. So giving people the ability to look at that kind of data, and even when we have assessments that we do where maybe they're not up to where we would like them to be, part of what we really try to do is help guide them to like, and here's how we can fix these things together, and here's some ideas about how to do that. And if there's money problems or political problems, that like, okay, if we can't have a single team and we need to have 2 or 3 separate teams, let's make sure that we have a written up risk mitigation plan. So if someone comes at your school and says, listen, you have 3 teams, that's not best practice, why are you doing this? This should not be the time that you're like, oh, we should come up with a defensive strategy. You should already have that written. Here's why we have 3 teams. Here are the things that we put in place, like cross membership, shared database, that are things that help mitigate the risk and prevent siloing or misses in between. So it's that kind of dashboard of your car, kind of knowing where the lights are. Like you don't have to fix everything right away, but it's good to know, where those touch points are. Cool. Bethany, do you have that to share for a sec? This is the third. So if you're following, we have the PDF document that is just the rubric. We have the online tool, which is accessible now. And the third thing we're working on, probably I would say early next week, we'll have out. We just want to circulate it a bit. Will be what Bethany's working on now is a nice kind of summary of this in a pretty color.
Yes. This is what we're building next, which is basically more of a description of what each of these is. So it gives you a little more detail on some of them, and it gives the supporting research for why this element is important, why we include it on the standards. There's some graphics in here that can help explain some of them. This will be built up quite a bit, but you can see at the end we have all of this research backing. So this is kind of gives you Why is this important? Why do we want to make sure this is an element in our team? So like I said, Brian said, this document should be ready hopefully sometime early next week, and I'll get that up on that same webpage for everybody.
Yeah, I set it out with the recording. It sounds good.
Yeah. That's looking great, you guys. There's so many different reasons that we approach evaluation and assessment. Sometimes you may do assessment to get a sense of satisfaction, right? A student satisfaction with being part of the team process, or faculty or staff members satisfaction being a part of the process. That's not what we're doing here. Sometimes we do assessment to look at outcomes, and that's not really what we're doing here. What this tool is made for, let's be very clear, is to look at team operations and processes in alignment with those research-based best practices that you just showed documented there on that piece of paper. So just to be really clear about, assessment really guides good practice, and in this case guides us toward alignment with those recommended best practices.
Good. I think we're at a spot where we're almost ready to break for questions. Let me show you one more thing that we have that's cool. Actually, before I do that, Pavan, just want to acknowledge your comment. And Bethany has this running list of things. So that one of the things on there already is creating a reset button. She's already this is how it runs in our conversations. Can we have a reset button? She's like, well, you can just hit the reset at the top. I'm like, yeah, I know, but a button's pretty. Can we get one? So you'll see a reset button if you've gone halfway and you're like, this is all wrong, and you want to reset, there'll be a button. Pavan, your comment's smart. I don't know if this is an easy answer or a tough answer, but creating under each of the areas an ability to kind of write in some commentary on that. I love that all in one piece. How does that translate, Bethany, if we put you on the spot? Is that a massive task or not too bad?
It's hard to say at this stage.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'll give it some thought. I think, it definitely is doable. I've got a couple options running in my head right now on how it might work. So I'll have to play with it in a way that allows it to be there without making the scroll even long, crazy long, or but yeah, I really like that idea. So it's something I definitely will work on figuring out how to incorporate.
And that's good feedback too. If other people feel like they could all help Bethany feel calmer about the length of the scroll. I don't see it as a problem at all. Like, I would see it as a work process. Like, I'm just going to go it down. It's actually nice to have it all on one screen for me. So especially if I was entering data, I don't think lengthening the scroll would bug me a whole lot. But if people have different takes on that, definitely want to hear it.
For higher ed, it actually feels fairly reasonable, because I'm used to, like, part of my reason for the box is, like, I'm kind of putting this in cast standard mode, and like everything is about support your finding with evidence. And so that's typically how I approach this. And so that's kind of where that came from. But to me, it feels very functional, though. Like, I also have to own that I am a millennial, so I'm like aging out a bit here. So like, I know other folks like to have things that they can do a little more seamlessly on their tablets or their devices. So that's where the scrolling becomes a problem. But for me, I think it works really well, especially for the audience you're kind of trying to reach.
Yeah, the mobile, it's not particularly well. It works on mobile mostly, but it's not easy to use on mobile. So that's another piece that at some point I'd like to be able to get working a little bit better. But at this stage, mobile is iffy.
Yeah, the creation too of and this was something we talked about, having kind of a short version that would just have kind of all 30 items at a small quarter page on a box with just the colors lit up, in terms of like what's there, almost like an indicator light on the car, would be another overview that we might be able to include. That's something that we had on our wish list. And Dave, to your point, and to Bethany's chagrin, like everything we create, like here's the version, and then there's another application. Sometimes it's K through 12, sometimes it's workplace. We really tried to be inclusive with, laws and things, like something as simple as including like FIPA for our Canadian friends instead of just having FERPA. So that's always a bit of a debate. Do we get to a tipping point where it makes sense to have a UK version? And part of the modeling at DPREP, which I've really liked, is our ability to tailor things that way. So even with the Pathways program and some of the other tools that we've had some schools approach us and say, we really like this. Can we tie this directly to our school? And we've had that ability to do that with Bethany's in-house programming. So I don't know if there would be an application for a specific school per se to have their own audit tool. I'd be worried about how often they're auditing themselves. Is that fair to say? They wanted their very own tool. You're auditing yourself too much. You need to slow down. But having an audit tool for the UK or for a K through 12 environment or a workplace would make a lot of sense. This one's definitely like college, university centric, but those adaptations are fairly easy, knock on wood, to make.
Yes, that would be relatively easy.
So the last thing I'll show you before we break for some questions is just, and I want to show it to you in a kind of interesting way, just so you can, and maybe no one cares, but I'm in control right now, so I get to do what I want. The cool thing I like is showing you a little bit about our internal process in terms of how we approach things. And I can show you the first graphic that we had in this space, if I can kind of jump over to it here. Those of you who've been around for a while, I love it when the stories come back to me. So people are like, Brian, a bit is like air traffic control. And I'm like, oh, like that was a story we started. It almost was a train yard, by the way. It was very close to being a train yard instead of air traffic control, but we went with people pulled me away from trains very quickly. But as we've re-envisioned it, I think the new idea that came up that was kind of cool, and you're going to see this a little bit more. If you've been familiar with the air traffic control metaphor, the new one really is looking at how a team might look in terms of spokes and a hub on a bicycle or a car wheel. And the first one that we had, show you here. I'll have to ask Dave Wilson, does hub and spoke translate to London in terms of how a bike works, the middle versus the out? I'm gonna go with a yes on that. So here's an example of how this team might approach and they had, this was a really cool a conversation we had with this team. I had never seen it before, the inclusion of the word rabbit. I'm a big fan of rabbits to begin with, but they went with the risk assessment behavioral intervention team. And I'm like, how did I never think of rabbit after all these years? So kudos to Central Washington on that one. Like it a lot. But the idea of kind of a spoke and wheel model where the hub is the central place, and then what we have radiating out from that are different departments that are all potentially on the team in the hub, but they also sort of spread out as they go. And if you look at this graphic, you might say that's kind of cool. There's some that are smaller circles that are maybe a little bit further away. Maybe they don't actually sit on the team. And there's others that are maybe in the middle that very much do. And one of the iterations that we had on this, which I think is much clearer, is we started to play with color. And I like how this came out, because what it does is it demonstrates, I think, how, just make sure I got the color ones right here. Now we can look at it in a different graphical way. So you'll be seeing this a lot more from us. I think it'll probably hit the same relevance as like the elephant in the John Sachs poem, but when we look at it now, what we have are the core of the team, right? This black hub in the middle is where the team is meeting and making these decisions. The folks in the blue circles are kind of the ones that are closest to the hub. These would be what we would describe as the essential members of the team. So we would have people like counseling, res life, if you have a residential life program, conduct, law enforcement. So those would be in that space. What we would see then, and then we move out a little bit further, and that's where we're going to start to see health services in those green circles, athletics, academic support. And then in the furthest circles, those red might be kind of more ancillary groups that we would see, working with this. So it's kind of a neat graphic, and you can just imagine the middle law enforcement is going to be that another blue circle there in that big centerpiece. But the idea here is to kind of conceptualize how this team works as we move forward. So I just wanted to share that with you as we went forward. So I think that gets us in a good spot to break for some questions. Any other thoughts before for the recording part that we wanted to include, Amy?
Yeah, one other I'll just share is, as you're approaching the evaluation or the assessment, be thinking about what you're going to do with your results. And I think we could probably have an entire webinar on that component, but once you have these in hand, sort of the politics and the related to implementing change, who are the stakeholders related to the changes that you need, which members of the team does it impact the most, and just kind of being ready to think through those leadership implications related to moving forward with a change process for the team. So just recognizing that, yeah, you've got the report in hand, but now you have to do something with it and approaching that carefully and strategically.
That's a great point. We should talk about that in the Q&A, just around the risk potential of having that report that kind of might expose some areas of concern. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Bethany, any final thoughts as we move forward?
I think we've got a good handle now. I think Amy's given us a lot to think about on this. So no, just as far as the tech side, like I said before, if there's questions, if there's other ideas that you have to improve the tool, please do pass those on. We really want to make this something that is robust and that is helpful for teams, and not just something that you use and forget about. We want it to be something that really is a useful tool, and it's one that is user friendly.
Charlie, I know you have kind of a new position here where you're looking at this from the outside, not as inundated or indoctrinated into all of our theories and ideas, but that, I have to say, is such a useful and important role as well. Because you see things, and this is really a good bit metaphor, you're going to see things that we're not going to see because we're so indoctrinated into the space. So there's no pressure to do so, but I wanted to pass to you kind of as we're closing and see if you had any just general reflections as someone who is kind of new to not the work, but the idea of like how an academic system might look at some of this teamwork, and maybe anything that came up for you before we took some Q&A. So anything to add?
Not much, but looking at the tool itself, I was really impressed by how useful it can be. And one thing that came to mind when you were talking about possible risk from identifying these things, from my time spent on like different board of directors, you kind of have that responsibility, but that really goes to the whole continued improvement, and I think that's just going to help push people forward, and it's going to make the team better. So nice work.
Yeah, that growth mindset stuff, the kind of continuous improvement, is huge. That it's the idea of kind of a failure mindset is, we see a problem, we're like, oh no. The only way we get better is where we are willing to kind of look at those things. And I can tell you, just as a personal reflection, it's always, I want things perfect when they go out, and people who know me close know that about me. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. It might surprise you from the outside, but I don't know. I don't need a full read on where everyone is about. Is that surprising, Brian's a perfectionist or not? But it's hard for me to throw something out and not have it be great. And I think it's been a real learning curve, that part of the creation process and part of our new model with DPrep is the willingness to kind of put something out there and to improve it. And rather than to hold it back for, say, 6 months to a year and put it through like a really full process, and then kind of deliver something from above for the field to say, this is what we've created for you all to use, rather than us saying, here's what we have that we think is really good and cool. Can we as a group come together and make it better? And if I have a company in mind that's done that really well, it's Maxient. Like, I've watched the Harks do that. They launched something, if you're familiar with, and that's no slight to other companies out there who have done database work, but I really like the Maxient approach, which is, this is really good what we have, and we're going to have a fest every year to teach you how to use it and to listen to you and to try to make it better. And I think that model's a smart one. That's where we're kind of following. So